The way I feel about the nature versus nurture debate is complex on different levels. I've thought about it a lot throughout my life, on personal reflection, on meeting new people, having friends who I know them by a boy name and by their boy gender and boy pronouns, and now suddenly they become a woman, or they're living as a woman, or they're transitioning into a woman, or vice versa, and being a sensitive, modern, evolved person to be attentive to those kind of things and caring about which pronoun you use and taking care of the formalities of speech, the niceties, the misters and the miss and the misses of the world that are lost in language now, and which not self-consciously, subconsciously affect our perception of ourselves and each other just by the words we use. So as a linguist, as a songwriter, as a poet, as a lyricist, I'm very attentive to words. I'm a word nerd. I'm very careful with them. And in writing songs for different characters and understanding different people, you, of course, as an artist, reflect on your own life. So it's always been a deep part of me wondering why I was the way I was. Why am I gay? Why am I special? Why was I a little perfect golden fairy as a child? I was this little blonde angel in a family of brunettes. And over the years, the hair went dark as I soiled, I guess. I was Snow White till I drifted. And I was this magical, special, perfect child who got straight A's without studying. I look back now, I have a photographic memory. There's something called complete autobiographical memory or something. It's a very rare disorder. I'm hoping I have it so I could be number 21 in the world or whatever it is. But I remember everything growing up and how the ordinary daily cruelties of children, that it's just part of life. And if you're not sensitive, it just rolls off your back, and that's just the way kids talk to each other. But long before I had any sense of sexuality and desire and what I was stimulated by, what I wanted to have a relationship, before any of that ever took hold, I knew very well that I was a faggot because the other children told me so every day on the playground, because there's nothing to say in response to that. There's no nuh-uh, am not. Once the word fag has been exploded on the playground like a landmine, and that child has been destroyed, and all the other children are laughing, now they know, like a Jay Leno Pavlovian dog punchline on late night TV, that Monica Lewinsky, ha 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 ha, we don't know why it's funny, but it's funny. Faggot, ha ha ha. And cruelty is the essence of comedy. Most comedy is very cruel, very cutting. And especially most clowns, most comedians are dark, nasty people who see the world from this outsider's point of view automatically for whatever reason. And then they try to make sense of it in the only way they can. And usually, if they're a defensive person, they have a defense mechanism of humor. So through my work over the years, 20 years of writing funny songs, because the harder it hurts, the truer it is, and the deeper the knife goes when you twist it. But to go through memories and patterns in your life and know from the earliest of ages that you knew you did not belong. I always say, in my house, my sister was the oldest, and then 2 boys, and then me. And it was like that. The sister, the 2 boys, and Tommy. It was, Tommy, go tell your brothers, or go tell the boys that dinner is ready. Tommy, go tell the boys that dinner is ready. That unknowingly, it was this accepted family thing that I wasn't like them. And it was fine, as long as I was singing show tunes to the dandelions and the gophers in the backyard, and doing cartwheels with my sister, and playing Barbies with her, or playing G.I. Joe with my brothers or whatever, or when I was by myself making G.I. Joe rape the Ken doll. In that time, though, I never identified as a male, and I always wondered, what is it about me? No matter what I say or say, I had a horrible lisp, and whoever put an S in the word lisp is an asshole or an asshole. See, it's funny because it's true. But they knew automatically. Even when I went to a different school or I'm walking down the street, what do they know? How can they sense that I'm gay, that I'm this horrible thing, the worst possible thing you could possibly be in American culture in the 70s was being the gay kid. Especially when not only the kids are tormenting you on the playground, but the teachers call you a sissy. I had a teacher who called me pansy every day of 5th grade. And finally, I told my mom, and for Christmas, we went to go get his Christmas present, and we got a pansy plant at Gemco in the nursery. A little purple pansy plant that had a little stick in it that said pansy in big old letters. And she walked in behind me on the last day of school before Christmas vacation and stood there as I set that on his desk. And he never said it again. But as a word nerd, and I'm sorry if this isn't making any kind of sequential, tangential sense, but welcome to my mind. At the same time, being the smart kid, I would say to my mother, "Mommy, what does this mean?" And she'd say, "I don't know, honey. Why don't you go find out and tell me?" Okay. And I read the dictionary for fun, and I read the encyclopedia. And learning one thing would soon cross-reference to this thing, and I'd always end up back with R for reproduction, and that was my porn. But in being this little brainiac kid who didn't know that all these years of isolation and hiding in my bedroom after being forced to tears yet again by my brothers or the bullies or whoever it was, that I could go in my room, shut the door, cry it out, and then put on some show tunes and do my homework and play with my stuffed animals. And as I got older, masturbate furiously in the mirror. And I had this private world, which I then tried to hide. Show tunes were the key to my gayness. And I had to hide them at all costs from my friends. And I would buy other albums and put them in front of them. And Janet Jackson and Whitney Houston, yeah, it was really, that threw them off. I remember buying a Beastie Boys album, think that would be butch. But it was back then that I paid attention to the importance of words and how do you define yourself. Being that nerdy kid who loved words and loved learning and I loved straight A's. They never told me that, okay, and when you graduate from college, no more straight A's for you. No more. You've had a steady diet of positive validation, being the best in the class every time without fail, without effort, and life is golden. And now you're done. Welcome to the real world. And all the people that you were smarter than are now going to be your supervisors and your managers and your bosses from here on out. And you're going to be trapped in a world of C+ students when you were the A kid. And it's like, well, but I'm gay. That's bad, right? So I can't be a priest because that was bad in the late 80s. The first witch hunts started going off for there. I couldn't be in the military. I couldn't get married. I couldn't have sex with girls, because that was a sin. I couldn't have sex with boys because that was a bigger sin. The clincher was when they said I couldn't masturbate anymore. And it's like, that is sex with someone I love. Anyway, I digress. As that nerdy kid who loved words, finally I heard a new word on the news, I think. And I went to my mommy and said, "Mommy, what's gay?" And she looked at her obviously very gay little 6-7-year-old Tommy and said, "Well, Tommy, gay is when a man loves another man or a woman loves another woman." And I remember thinking, oh, like me. I remember thinking that. I remember that moment, very crystalline quality in my mind. Because my mother, unknowingly, gave the only good answer to that question. What is gay? Gay is when a man loves another man or a woman loves another woman. It has nothing to do with sin or guilt or shame or religion or anything. It has very little to do with sex. It's all about love. I knew I was gay. I knew that I was attracted to men, that I loved men, that someday I wanted to be a Playgirl model and then later a cult model, just these hyper-masculine, wow, that I could look like Magnum P.I. and Starsky and Hutch and still be gay. It was like, oh, this is good. Because, especially in the 70s, and it took me a long time to figure out that gay and faggot meant the same thing. Until I looked them up in the dictionary. Try looking up the word faggot in a dictionary when you're 7, feeling sad. And then, around 11, when we had cable for the first time, and I caught this Swedish movie by Paul Verhoeven called Spetters, which he later directed Total Recall and Showgirls, and had a big budget Hollywood career for a minute, but for when he started, he was this independent Swedish filmmaker. And it was about this rough and tumble gang of kids, these tough young punks in Sweden. And one of them comes out to his father, who beats him nearly to death with a Bible while quoting Leviticus at him. Leviticus? They haven't assigned that one in school. 16 years of Catholic school later. So I go to the Bible and I look it up. And I'm an abomination now. Gay was great. Faggot was awful. Abomination. Oh my God. And I would go to confession for First Friday Mass once a month in Catholic school. And usually be the kid up giving the reading. And I would get to confession and have nothing to confess because I was a perfect kid who never did anything wrong and never got in trouble. And I would make up sins. Well, I lied to my brother 4 times and, I don't know, I was mean to my dog, whatever. But then finally I get in there and, well, Father, forgive me, I've sinned. It's been a month. It's been 29 days since my last confession. What are your sins, my child? Well, Father, Leviticus chapter 18, verse and whatever. And he started to laugh on the other side of the screen. He laughed, laughing at me in confession. And he says, really? Why don't you tell me more about that? And he says, well, what's there to tell? I know this is me and I know it's wrong and And he laughed some more and he said, son, you're going to be okay. Don't be mean to your dog. Don't lie to your brothers and say 4 Hail Marys and 2 Our Fathers. I realized years later that the confessional was the first glory hole booth, and the priest, those were codes. 4 Our Fathers and 2 Hail Marys, whatever they were, back in the monasteries, back in the old days. When that's where you put your gay son. Because nobody asks Father McClanahan why he's not married. Because he's a priest. So every Catholic mother, of course, wants a priest in the family, and that's where you put the gay kid. And they don't fuck the altar boys, they fuck each other. It's that simple. Ask the priest who was one of my teachers who was at International Mail buying his Speedo for his annual summer cruise to Mexico when I was 16 and walk in the door to International Mail for the first time, and there's a priest I know. Like, oh, little Tommy Orr, nice to see you, gotta go. Yeah, that was funny. So after this cataclysmic confessional, a few weeks go by, I'm out on the playground at lunchtime. And here comes Father What's-His-Face walking by. And in front of all the other kids says, so Tommy, how's that little Leviticus problem? And the game of dodgeball stopped and scratch on the record. And everyone and then they just shook it off and went on. But you're just violating the secrecy of the confessional to an 11-year-old and destroying me even further? Yeah. So I mean, to go through life getting disrespected by every coach and every teacher and priests who are all collectively picking on this little sissy kid who's perfect. I'm wonderful. And I was quite the ladies' man. All my friends were girls. I was such a charmer. I'm told when I was 3, I climbed into the receptionist's lap at the dentist's office and proposed marriage and planted a big kiss on her and said, how about it, sweetie? Which apparently I had seen in some old movie and decided to try that line on the receptionist. But it was like, there's a movie called Galaxy Quest with Sigourney Weaver and Tim Allen and Alan Rickman. And it's a Star Trek spoof about what happens when those actors are typecast forever and their only thing is to go to the conventions. Not knowing that there's an alien culture that's been picking up the TV waves and built the ship to the specifications and come to get them to save the universe against the bad guys. Well, they get out in space and there's this planet that they go down to because there's a ball of fuel they need for the plot, whatever. So they get to the planet, they're about to get the ball of fuel, and then suddenly they see this little tiny alien creature who's sick and broken and crippled, crawling to the water. And he crawls out and Sigourney Weaver says, oh, and she's about to help. And they're like, no. And they pull her back behind the rock. And pretty soon, all these other little creatures pop up behind the rocks. And they're all like, and they're like, and Sigourney says, oh, look, they're going to help him. And they all creep up around him and they're all looking lovingly. And then the giant fangs come out and they devour him. And that is my childhood. children sense weakness and anything different. But if they can find one that they can all focus their hatred at, the little scapegoat, the little village idiot, the little sissy, the fancy man who owns the beauty parlor around the corner, whatever, it's gone on for history, for centuries. Just take the most obvious example of it. That's why most homophobia, most hate crimes are committed by guys who have their own closet issues or whatever. Hate the thing that you are the most. So to go through all that, and yet still be student body president and class president and editor of the school paper and captain of the swim team and just this golden boy, Mr. High School, all-American, perfect virgin kid, because every time I did try to have sex with anybody, it would end disastrously. I'd get caught, there'd be shame and emotional blackmail. I'm going to tell dad, blah, blah, blah. Your opinion does not mean anything in my development as a sexual being. And yet, these awful incidents are now shaping who I am as a person, sexually, socially, blah, blah, blah. When a young man is not able to learn how to be a sexual being in his own body, in his when a young man is not able to learn how to master his own body as a sexual being, at the time it's supposed to happen, as he's maturing in adolescence with all the other social games and dances and dates and passing notes and I think you're cute and all the things that make us who we are, I didn't get to participate in that ever. Because I was always taking the homely girls to the dances because they were my friends. And I thought we were all virgins, so it didn't matter. And then later when I found out how much sex was going on without me in high school, and when I had the biggest dick on the football team, and I should have had the locker room strut, and I should have been the quarterback, and having guys and girls and anything I wanted, because that's what people in power do. Rich people in Hollywood, are they gay? Are they straight? They're rich. They're at the right pool parties, in the right hot tubs at the right time. And all people are inherently bisexual. So, that all said, suddenly now I'm ready to face college. But I go to another Catholic school, Catholic University. And I'm in a dorm room by myself. My roommate and his friend moved in together, and there wasn't a housing shortage. So I had this room to myself and no social skills about how to get anyone back to my room for some fun. So instead of a normal college experience and karaoke and hanging out at the bars and titty bars with the guys and whatever it is, I was always going off to West Hollywood by myself, getting there at 10, not knowing that the party didn't even start till 12:30, and by the time it's 12:30, I'm drunk on 3 Coors Lights or whatever. I had another whiskey sour with my mustache that I grew so I wouldn't get carded, hoping I don't get killed on the way home because I've got my brother's ID. And was just this little sad Twinkie drunk. By the time the fun kids come in, I would be like done with the night. And so I never had friends in high school. I never went to high school, and I did have friends. Let me take that back. I was so popular. Everybody loved me, but nobody knew me. And I didn't know me because I never had anyone I could share it with because I didn't trust anyone. And I've never trusted anyone, least alone my family, who, God bless their hearts. And they're so mad at me when I still talk about all this stuff. And it's just like, I'm not blaming you. I just want to understand what happened and how I reacted to it and why. And how did that shape me? And how did that make me make choices later on? Because when I first came out, I hated gay people. I didn't want to be one. I didn't want to be a drag queen. Didn't want to be a Leatherman. They both scared me. So extreme in either direction. And now I am the master of the Leatherman and the drag queen. Because I am the same thing. We're all drag queens. Drag is armor. It's when a drag queen paints up, he can be the saddest, homeliest, most pathetic excuse for a loser, but once he's in full battle gear, he is this radiant diva. And there's power, ancient magic. And all the ancient cultures understood this. And so the Indians had the Bardosh, and the sacred shamans, and the oracle at Delphi had the priestesses, many of whom were male, and of course the Greeks had the clear understanding of the third sex, and all these things that have been lost because of religion and government and Christianity and politics and bullshit. there was a time when that little golden fairy child would have been plucked out of the tribe and protected and educated and taken away. And I wish to God they had sent me to a boys' school where I could have learned to compete with other smart boys, because I was always the only smart boy and a bunch of girls. And yet being smart was what identified me as gay. When all the other boys don't care enough about school to study, and my A+ is throwing off their bell curve, when I'm the difference between their C- and a C, they hated me. And well, they should.
A couple of things that you passed over that I kind of want to bring back a little bit. You mentioned something that you called the third sex.
Sure. The third sex. Think of the song "The Origin of Love" from Hedwig and the Angry Inch.
Exactly what it is.
Which takes the Aristotelian notion of a third sex, that there were male creatures, female creatures, and male creatures, and they were split down the middle, and as each of us is born onto this plane of existence, it is our quest to go find our missing half. Very beautiful. And logical, because back then they didn't have emergency rooms and emergency natal care and prenatal care where this little deformed fetus that has both genitals, it gets saved and raised, and they sew up one or the other, and that little child has to conform in this body that nature intended very differently. Perhaps to have both. I mean, there are 1 in every 100,000 kids, or whatever it is a hermaphroditic baby with both sets of genitals, and the parents get to decide which one they wanted more, and they put the kid in a dress, or see sleepaway camp, that's the worst one. But that in the old days, this same baby would have been either celebrated and protected and saved again, or killed. And the midwife would have said, "Oh, baby's dead." Or maybe she recognizes the ugly green aura of the evil child, or whatever. There was a time when not every life was sacred. And there was a reason only certain babies lived, and survival of the fittest, and we already have too many mouths to feed. And in Sparta, the king had to tell whether or not you were allowed to procreate. These are all the things that have been bleached and leached out of history and religion and things. Phallic worship. In most cultures, and vagina worship are sacred, holy parts of their religion, until Christianity came and stripped that all away. And now we don't have any female gods. What? We don't celebrate fertility and fecundity and the seasons and...
So,
But I can go back to the third sex if you want me to talk about that.
do you know,
right.
actually, in a certain way, we will be going back there, actually. Do you feel, okay, so being born that way, as opposed to maybe putting your science hat on and defending that if that's what you believe, or whatever components you think may have shaped you into being gay, or what do you?
Well, sure.
Would you say that you were born that way? What are your?
Well, from my earliest memories, I was attracted to men and had no interest in girls. When my friend Nicole and I found a stack of Playboys and Playgirls in her dad's garage, because her mom was a swinger too, and it was the 70s, and he worked for Capitol Records. And this swinging couple with my friend Nicole, who was a total tomboy, we went in the garage, and there was this giant stack of Playboys and Playgirls. And she looked at the Playboys, and I looked at the Playgirls. And now she's now straight, and we laugh about it on Facebook. But I was intrigued by the objectification of men, to be able to look at a picture and not be caught staring, and appreciate the beauty of the male body. And so yes, I was born this way from a very early age. And then shaped because there was something special about me. Society did everything it could to kind of confine me. And so finally, when I did come out, and this is why I say I don't particularly trust my family, because everything sensitive I've ever told them gets taken out of my hands. And that's always the hardest thing in life, is when you're trying to come out carefully with the careful words and the control is taken from you. My parents were getting divorced. It was just me and my mom at home. I was the last one, the classic empty nest syndrome. And it was just her and me. And we were talking and drinking and crying. And she said finally, well, it was like you were 16 and you thought you were gay. And I said, well, Mom, I think I might still be. Because I was dating boys and girls. I had finally lost my virginity to both. And girls were harder to get in bed, and I never viewed them as sexual objects, and I didn't know how to objectify them that way. But guys were easy. So it quickly escalated that I was having more experiences with guys than with girls. But mostly because my penis was too large, and most of the girls were too virgin, and it would hurt them. And they'd say, oh my God, stop, it hurts. And I didn't know that what every other guy knows from practice is that when she says that, all she really means is pull my pigtails and slap my ass and stick it in harder, is what it really means. And I didn't know that, and I stopped. And so I had, now again, so many of my sexual experiences were just so traumatic in a comical way. I mean, just the sad clown, boo-hoo. So when I finally did come out, and my mother said she wouldn't tell the rest of my family, and then she did. And she told my dad and my sister, and my dad told my brothers. And now suddenly my gayness, which they've been telling me that I'm a fag all these years, now when I say it with a little hint of pride, that is unacceptable. And I got the stern lecture from my father that there's nothing wrong with being gay per se, it's just not for you. You want to be married and have children and give your mother grandchildren. And you know, of course, that your sisters and brothers won't let you near their kids if you're going to choose this for yourself. And I cried and almost killed myself. I mean, we didn't have It Gets Better videos back in my day. But we did have, what I had was two parents who, until that time, had always told me the truth and never talked down to me as a child. I was also just this very mature, sophisticated little 10-year-old who could carry on a conversation with the adults at the birthday party, because I didn't want to go hang out with the kids in the back. And so I'd go talk to the adults. And so I was a Doogie Howser. They wanted me to skip college, or skip high school and go to college. But that didn't work out either, because apparently my dad thought it was important to go to high school and get called fag every day some more. But when I did come out, after all the Sturm und Drang and blah, I ultimately said to myself, well, they vowed to stay married forever in the church. And look what they thought of that vow. I never vowed to not be gay. It's not even in the Ten Commandments. I mean, if it's really that bad, you'd think they would have kept it in the edit. And they'd always told me that, Tommy, we love you exactly the way you are, and God made you just the way you are, and you're perfect and special. And I said, well, if this is the way I am, then I'll be that. And meanwhile, all the other options had been shut out from me, because I had thought about the military, I had thought about the priesthood. I would have been a fabulous priest. Are you kidding me? In a pulpit? Captive audience? And after college, I had my first boyfriend, and then started having relationships. It wasn't just sex. Learning that I could meet another gay man and not have sex with him if I chose not to, that was a revelation. And sex became currency of sorts. And that's a gay man, when you're meeting in bars, then of course we become alcoholics. I mean, it's just, they drive us underground and then condemn us for having sex underground in parks and bathrooms. And it's like, well, where else are we going to do it, right? And thank God it's all changing. But it pisses me off that Glee and RuPaul are on TV, because I didn't get that when I was in high school. I didn't have hot and cold running porn on my cell phone under the desk in high school. So I came out with a vengeance and explored. Just explored. Went to every bar there was. Went to gay bars, went to drag bars, went to leather bars, went to cowboy bars, went to bear bars, and eventually grew the facial hair and learned, oh, I'm not a blonde Twinkie. It's okay. Even though it was the late 80s in West Hollywood, and the worst thing you could possibly be was a non-blonde. Thank you, Chi Chi LaRue. And I discovered what underwear contests and the fun side of naughty nightlife, if you will. and was very good at it, very successful. And then I moved to Seattle and did theater and met more gay people and thought I was really coming into understanding myself as an author, as a writer, as an actor, as a performer. And I was militantly gay. Just gay, gay, gay. Oh, I'm so gay. God, I'm gay. And I wrote a letter to my family. I'm gay. National Coming Out Day. Blah. 20 years later, that letter is still talked about in hushed tones in my family. And while I became a chameleon in each bar, like Woody Allen is Zelig, that he just transforms into whoever he's hanging out with, and I still do it. And that's the fun of drag, is you can recreate yourself in whatever guise you want. I also found what I didn't fit into, which was pretty much everything. I could pass. I could go enjoy it, but I never participated in it. Again, because I didn't have friends. I didn't know how to have a friend or how to be a friend. An honest, pure, truthful, cry till 4 a.m. over a bottle of wine. Let's share this and build and grow. And it took me forever to find my tribe and find San Francisco and find gender dysphoria and find euphoria in gender dysphoria. Where I've got 24 friends who are FTMs and MTFs, and I went to a wedding where the bridesmaids were the femmes and the groomsmen were all MTFs. No, other way around. The groomsmen were FTMs, all these hot little boy dykes, many of whom were transitioning. And it was the handsomest, most beautiful wedding I've ever seen, out in the grove with the Lord of the Rings as the theme music as they rode in. She should have been on a horseback. It was gorgeous. Yes.
In the light of your comment earlier, you said that you think that everybody is born bisexual. Are you bisexual?
I am bisexual. And that's the last closet, isn't it? Because so many gay men are such pure Kinsey sixes that the very thought of a vagina grosses them out. And they will say heinous, awful things about them. And a lot of gay men are really misogynistic. And a lot of lesbians are really man-haters. That isn't necessarily anything wrong in them. It's just how we all boil down. Especially when we move to the gay ghettos and segregate ourselves. And then make ghettos within ghettos. And a subculture of outcasts makes outcasts of each other. And the differences now become real. It's like high school all over again. And it's the cool kids and the nerds, and the leather are the jocks, and then there's the gym bunnies and the drag queens, and then the lesser drag queens who might go to a lesser bar because they're not quite as fierce as the other ones. And we're such a superficial culture, especially now with the internet, where you can automatically especially now with the internet, when you can automatically dismiss somebody, scan them like the Terminator. Nope. Delete. Your arms are too big, your arms are too small, your dick is too big, your dick is too small, your ass is fat, you're ugly, you're black, you're Chinese, whatever. I can dismiss you in seconds. When before they at least had to get to know you before they said no, right? So now we're this culture that is so tolerant and accepting, and it's vicious. And the gay paradigm that has now been packaged and sold to young gay America. We're a huge demographic consumer group. We're still not a voting bloc because we've still got too many log cabin Republicans who love money more than being gay. But there's this package of what it means to be gay now. Very much Queer Eye for the Straight Guy and the A-list and RuPaul's drag show, whatever, Drag Race. That you drink fancy vodkas and you wear fancy clothes and you pretend you're one of the girls on Sex of the City, and it's all hee, very queeny. And this is the acceptable view of gay. Gay has finally done what it's done in pop culture, but as long as it stays with the eunuch clown, I call it. Paul Lynde, Nathan Lane, Charles Nelson Riley, Jack on Will and Grace. As long as he's faggy and funny, the gay best friend, instead of, yeah, I'm gay, yeah, I suck cock. I suck chrome off the bumper. I could suck the brass off a doorknob. Got a problem with that? I'm the high priest of phallic worship. Fuck you, all right? As soon as it becomes butch, then it's intimidating. And then it's back to the locker room and alpha male strutting and my rocket's bigger than your rocket and just Dr. Freud 101 with Napoleon complex Bush, and obviously Clinton had a big Bubba swagger. I mean, you know a man with a large dick. There's something about that carriage. Because they never worry about it. And when you can take away any feelings of negativity toward that and own it and love it and know what you're doing with it because you're an expert coxman who's been doing it for a long time, like any guy who bangs cheerleaders in high school and whatever, scores however many times he can't, so he can learn what he's doing. And in the old days, young men were encouraged to have sex so that by their honeymoon, the virgin bride could be taught. And of course he was an experienced lover. And she would never begrudge him having ever been with other women. She's the bride, she doesn't have a say in it, blah, 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 blah. As soon as the masculine side of androgyny takes over, that's when as soon as the masculine side of androgyny rears its manly head, that's when everyone's hardwiring goes bzzz, because femininity and gayness, it's but as soon as it's masculine and then it threatens, now your Brokeback Mountain was dangerous to suggest that two men who went away on a fishing excursion or played poker on Friday nights with the buddies were doing anything but manly behavior. Well, what's not manly about men fucking? That is the manliest behavior of all. And gay men don't have prostate trouble in their old age, I'm told. Our hardwiring is not prepared for the masculine side of androgyny, and that's why transgenders and masculine women, dykes, that's threatening to women. And it's alpha male, it's caveman mentality. We act like we're such superior, sophisticated, intellectual, learned creatures, and we're cave people. We like to eat, we like to sleep, we like to fuck. Repeat. Everything we do is built around gaining money so we can have the things we need so we can do those three things. And if you have more money, then you can buy the fancier car that gets you laid. If you make more money, you can eat more food. If you make more money, you can have a nicer bed. But it's still cavemen competing to do the things we need to do, our biological needs, in style and comfort. And look at the mess we're in today economically, because everybody thinks they're entitled to a fancy life with the fanciest things. No, you're not. No, you're not. Caviar is a delicacy, and you save it for the king on the feast. You don't get to guzzle it down your gluttonous throat. How dare you? You save the prize lamb to offer to the virgin at the sacrifice to get so your crops survive. The Spartans learned a Spartan lifestyle is living on nothing so that when there's abundance, everything's great. And when there's nothing, you don't starve to death because you know how to survive on very small portions. And the men in the Spartan community always fed the women and children first and took what was left. I'll have you know. Wait till I do my movie on the Spartans. And it's the obvious ones. The really fishy trannies who look just like women, the Brazilians with 10-inch dicks and double D cups, are married to a lot of Italian senators. The truly feminine tranny has a golden path in this world. There are so many straight men who love to have sex with a beautiful transsexual. Getting fucked in the ass by a tranny who from the waist up is a Miss America or a Miss Brazil or Miss Venezuela, and from the waist down is Mr. Venezuela. But the straight man can close his eyes and enjoy what she's doing to him and look up and see boobs. So hooray! They're very successful. And the really manly dykes who can pass, they're the ones, they kind of disappear in and they and for many years, didn't want to assimilate. They just were kind of down low. It's the 6'6" guy pushing a stroller down Commercial Street in Provincetown when they have Transgender Week. And shall we review transgender, transsexual, transvestite, all of them? But in Provincetown, there's 1 week a year where couples and families and cross-dressers from around the world come to this little fishing village and push their strollers. And he's wearing some god-awful frock he got at Goodwill and a bad wig and the only size 16 pumps they had at Salvation Army. And his wife is walking down the street with him, trying to hold her head up high and be normal. And it's sweet. And some of them don't have to try. Some of them, they're perfectly natural. And they're great. And this is their way to celebrate. And they go off and do it on their own. That's what kills me. No one ever told me I could be bisexual. When I was coming out, and all through my formative years, since as long as I can remember, the only bisexuals were Elton John and David Bowie, neither of whom is bisexual anymore. And in my day, it was a fence-sitting cop-out to be bisexual, as opposed to the most natural thing in the world. Of course you have male lovers, of course you have female lovers. There's so much love to be had and shared, and Jerry Herman said it in Le Cage aux Folles. You'll meet your mistress and your boyfriend and your wife. And the rest of the world has these wonderful open marriages and clubs and just an understanding that men do things together and women do things together, and as long as you're not a bottom, it's okay. And it's retarded. But it's still the jarring thing when you see a man in a dress and it's not a joke, and he's not Milton Berle, and it's not vaudeville or English pantomime or whatever. When he's serious and he likes it, or God forbid is getting turned on by it, that is so threatening to people. And the Dykes on Bikes processional every year that gets bigger and bigger and bigger. I never see them any other time of year. I never see women on motorcycles. Where do they come from? But it just makes people so uncomfortable to not be in powder blue and pink for boys and girls. It's just... And there's nothing Americans like less than being uncomfortable for even a second. Oh, I'm cold. Oh, I have a headache. Better take a pill. Oh, I don't like this. Stewardess, is there a movie on this flight? Whatever. We are instant gratification. We want our entertainment now. I'm bored. Oh, I'm bored. I'm bored. Entertain me. Entertain yourself. Read a book. Turn off the TV. Turn off all these appliances that are guzzling our energy. Gee, where's the electricity going in California? It's in all the 5th graders' rooms with their 12 video games that are still plugged in and 6 VCRs blinking, draining electricity away with toys that children shouldn't have, and certainly shouldn't have credit cards to go buy. But I'm crossing lines of what we're talking about.
So you gotta, what brought you, what for some reason made me think of you for this.
Yes.
And really, I don't know if it's cohesive to this or not, but I have to ask you about it because it's what made me think of you. The song. The Leatherman and the Drag Queen should be friends.
Let's talk about the Leatherman and the Drag Queen should be friends, shall we?
Was there an agenda behind that, or what do you think? And I do somehow relate it to Born This Way, and I'm wondering if there's any comments about could perhaps the Drag Queen be learned, or the Leatherman, could that have been learned from someone in their life, someone that influenced them in such a way, and the difference, and why is that one like that and that one like that, and yet
sure.
They came in, and what was that about for you behind creating that number?
All right. Here is the story behind The Leatherman and the Drag Queen Should Be Friends from Dirty Little Show 2. I was in Seattle, and a leather bar opened, brand new leather bar, and there was nothing cleaner than a brand new leather bar. Leather bars are not meant to be clean. They're supposed to have decades of primordial ooze seeped into the floorboards. It's very important, and until a leather bar is seasoned properly, it always just feels wrong. So the Cuff opened in Seattle, and it was like they had gone to IKEA and got the leather bar kit with the chain link panels, and you snap it together, and it was all shiny and new, and oh, look at the new motorcycles in the corners, and it was all very butch and chromy and shiny. and very small. Now it's the Cuff Complex. It's huge, takes up a whole city block. But at the time, brand new bar with some very staunch, we're leathermen, leather, leather, leather. We wear leather all the time. We live in leather. We wear our full dress uniform leather, buying produce at the supermarket, and we go to church in leather, and we play volleyball in leather. In leather, wherever we go. I got lots of them. I think perhaps my mom would collapse if she knew I went to church in my chaps in leather. Yeah. So this brand new bar opens, and they had this little thing called the Dog Run, which was basically a smoking patio outside, but it was 6 feet wide and the length of the building. And it quickly became known as the Catwalk instead of the Dog Run. But you had to be in full leather uniform dress code to go on the Dog Run. And Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence were coming to the bar, as they go to all bars, to hand out condoms and safe sex information and to make the thing lively. Because that's what drag queens do, is they make the party fun. Because there's nothing worse than a bar full of men not saying anything, or now they're all buried in their cell phones. Blue face, I've heard it's called. How was the bar? Nothing but blue face. Ugh. Were being stopped at the door because they weren't in leather dress code, which was posted on the door. Leather military, no cologne, and no drag queens. And half these guys are leather men in their private lives when they're not being sisters. And there's a lot of drag queens who are leather men, and there's a lot of leather men who are big Nelly drag queens. And leather is drag, as we'll get to. So they were stopping the drag queens from going on the back porch, and this huge scandal was caused, and there were letters back and forth in the Seattle Gay News, and it was a scandal. And right then I was doing one of my earliest parody shows called Attack of the Killer Show Queens. And I had written all these songs for that whole sequence, because in Dirty Little Show Tunes it starts with, we are nothing like a dame. We don't have boas made of feathers because we're not that kind of fag. And we don't admit that leather's just another kind of drag. And we really doubt our manhood, so we overcompensate. What do we hate? Kiss me, Kate. Damn straight. So that was the song I wrote. And then the drag queens invade the leather bar to Guys and Dolls, something. What about your dad? Has he always been sad since they canceled Flip Wilson and Milton Berle? It's, don't be blue, don't be flustered. If he tells you you should wear mustard, just be glad. Your dad's really a big old girl. Anyway. And then it turns into the Rumble from West Side Story, and then it resolves with, oh, the Leatherman and the drag queen should be friends. But I hadn't written that song yet. I had just written the other songs for this early show. And a friend who was in the audience afterwards said, oh, that was my favorite part, but you had it. Why didn't you write, oh, the Leatherman and the drag queen should be friends? And I was like, oh, that makes perfect sense. So I went home and wrote it, and it became the showstopper that it is, and the final punctuation of that last bit of the show. And there's nothing better than a showstopper. Everyone loves a showstopper. I moved to San Francisco. We're putting Dirty Little Show Tunes together. I pulled the song out of the file, and my director, Alan Sawyer, put it all together. And we did it, and it got huge laughs in San Francisco. Because the same thing happens at every leather bar in the world. At one point or another, they kick the drag queens out. We're men, we're men, blah, 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 blah. San Francisco's gotten really good about it now. And I defy you to find a bar in this town that doesn't have at least one drag queen in it at any given time. But it has happened. The show has played in Seattle, San Francisco, Minnesota, Chicago, Houston, Madison, Wisconsin, and Richmond, Virginia. And in every single town, somebody tells me, oh my God, that happened. And it's like, oh, of course it did. So it's timeless. I wrote the song 15 years ago. But there's still this weird thing with the confrontation, the rumble. And again, it's these clashing stereotypes, clashing energies, and different gay men gravitate towards what I think they want themselves to be. Like their ideal version of themselves is what they gravitate towards, those other kind of people and that style of dress and this kind of bar and this kind of entertainment and this kind of music. It's just human nature to gather with like-minded souls, birds of a feather. So the fierce diva spirits gravitate towards drag, and the manly warrior male energy goes towards the leather. And and the leather is ancient ritual. Like, there are guys who have studied their ancient armature of the old world. And you'll go to a black party and see someone who knows the difference between a Roman and a Greek gladiator costume or whatever. They know. And it's skin, and it's sacred, and there's firelight and torches and olive oil, and there's nothing better than a good royal sacred orgy to really kick off
the history of the drag queen.
Absolutely.
So is it more about that they're actually very much the same thing, or is it more about actually they're very different?
Well, yes, both. They are both the same, and they're both very different.
Is that
as all
you were saying?
Yes and no. I mean, that's why I say we don't admit that leather is just another kind of drag. Drag is just what you put on. Drag started in Shakespeare. Dr.A.G. Dressed as girl, because there were no female actresses in Shakespeare's day. So it was a drag role. And a boy played a girl. And I bet many of the elderly senators in the U.S. Congress today probably played drag on stage in some varsity show back in the 30s doing some Cole Porter number.
So do you think the Leatherman was born a Leatherman?
No. That's the thing. And that's the fun of playing dress up as a grown-up. Some Leathermen are born Leathermen, yes. They're just a butch, trucker, fucker, hot trade who just was always manly. And
I mean the fetish. As
well
as drag. Isn't there a fetish component?
Of course. And there are a lot of guys who like to wear leather, and it's not part of their sex life. It's just part of their persona, their Marlboro Man image, if you will. The butch trappings of life. This is what I'm attracted to. This is how I view myself. And to tell you frankly, I finally look like the Playgirl centerfolds and the cult models that I wanted to be when I was 7. So I have become that. And I don't go to the gym. Ha ha ha. No, my entire life is nothing but heavy lifting. My confirmation name when I was christened, the only sacrament that I was allowed to have after baptism and Eucharist was confirmation. I'm not allowed to have holy orders. Can't be a priest. I'm not allowed to get married, so I can't have matrimony. And there are a lot of priests who wouldn't give me a deathbed blessing because I'm gay. It's like, you picked me. You baptized me as a baby, and now you're going to take away 3 sacraments? How dare you? And they ruined reconciliation. Ugh. Is it a fetish? For many, yes. Is it entertainment? I'd say for most. For most gay men in drag, it's a job. It's something fun. It's a fantasy. I'm a bank teller by day, but I'm Tina Turner by night. I'm Christina Aguilera. I'm always lip syncing in the mirror. I might as well do it on stage and get a couple tips, and it's fun. And it's the old school gaiety. We have, as an old cartoon in Playgirl once said, 2 little old ladies sitting next to each other. Why did they have to ruin a perfectly word? Here we go. I saw a cartoon in an old issue of Playgirl with 2 little old ladies sitting next to each other. And one of them says, why did they have to work? Damn it, I'm going to try it again. I saw a cartoon, I saw this cartoon in Playgirl magazine when I was 7 of 2 little old ladies sitting next to each other. And one of them says, why did they have to ruin a perfectly good word like gay? What was wrong with pervert? Which, even I was 7, I thought that was funny. There was another cartoon later in The Advocate, and it was 2 little old ladies and 2 gay men, and the ladies are saying, and the funny thing is, they're both, and they marry.
So, do you think sexual orientation is a choice?
Sexual orientation is a choice? No. Sexual behavior is a choice. Absolutely. You can choose not to have sex. You'll go insane, as most celibate priests and nuns do, and anyone who's trying to deny their natural urges, yeah, that's wrong. There's nothing right about denying your basic physiological urges. Did I choose to be queer, to gay, whatever I am? No, I was born that way. Did I choose to embrace it and learn to love it in my way and explore it and find people and learn what it meant to be an other and realize that my not being part of the mainstream was the best thing that could ever have possibly happened to me, and that not having to get married and not having to have children, especially when truly within myself that's not what I wanted, and it certainly wouldn't be what she wanted. I never wanted to break a woman's heart, some wife that I truly would have loved. Because I love women. I love sex with women. It's delightful. It's just a lot more work than with men. But I never wanted my wife to come home and find me in bed with the UPS man. And then have that kind of betrayal and shame. And I had college professors who came on to me and came out to me who were grandfathers. And just in their day, in the 20s, 30s, there wasn't a word for it, and there certainly weren't choices for it. And you did what society expected you to do. And they didn't regret it because they loved their grandchildren and they loved the lives they had led. But there was this emptiness and this sadness of what they had missed. This one professor I'm talking about had a son who would come out, and he had embraced him as being gay, and then he died of AIDS. And then this old man spent his off hours when he wasn't teaching, volunteering at AIDS organizations in West Hollywood. It was very sweet. And I would take him to gay movies, and we saw Paris is Burning.
So again, in the light of one of your comments, just in your words, the difference between sexual orientation and sexual behavior.
Well, the difference between sexual orientation and sexual behavior is what you do, is what you're actually doing, the acts. And for a lot of straight men, you can have sex with another man and not be gay. It's called being on the down low. And if Tom Cruise has sex with men, he's not gay. He's not a part of the gay community. And that's the difference, is I did choose to accept being gay and to learn to love being gay and to then hopefully exude joy and light and laughter and love to anyone who doesn't feel okay in themselves, because this is the way I am. In this lifetime anyway. And maybe tomorrow I'll meet some fabulous woman who'll sweep me off my feet, who knows. It would be fun to have some girlfriends at this age, and I've got a couple that I've been dating. The difference between sexual behavior and sexual orientation is the difference between being hungry and eating. And just because you're hungry for something, you may know it's bad for you, but that's what makes it more delicious. Nobody wants the salad when you can have dessert.
However, once again, I keep coming off of this because of comments you're making. So, if one man has a successful sexual has a successful sexual experience with another man or a woman with woman, and it's a successful sexual experience, and they're capable of it, then doesn't that make them at least bisexual?
No, not necessarily.
Explain.
It's experimentation. I mean, well, now we're getting down to semantics. And this is why there's so much confusion. Getting back to the 7-year-old word nerd, when words are misused, when words are used interchangeably that aren't interchangeable, especially by a nation of people who were never meant to be writers, but everyone's got their own blog now, and punctuation and grammar and spelling have gone out the window, and words are being used incorrectly. And the Republicans have think tanks to come up with the trigger words that will elicit the biggest response. Then yes, if you have one successful experience with a man and it was good and you liked it, yeah, you're bisexual. But bisexuality I don't know where this was going. Um,
I like when you get stumped.
yeah. Well, they're interesting questions.
Yeah.
Take it back. A man can have a great experience with another man. It's called foxhole buddies. And many men in the military, on a submarine, in a fraternity house, in prison, wherever it's an all-male environment, can have a loving sexual relationship with another man. Best buddies. Hang out all the time. They go out drinking on shore leave, and then they always share a hooker when they go back to the room, and then they pass out. Well, sometimes they don't pass out, and sometimes they don't get a hooker. And when they get to Hollywood, they're the ones who ask Betty Grable to dance at the Hollywood canteen. And the floor clears and they jitterbug their hearts out. This is actually a past life regression I'm sharing with you now. So I think I was that guy who asked Betty Grable to jitterbug in the 40s. But yes, men can have sex with other men. Great sex, fun sex. And still be heterosexual. And if you look at some very mainstream porn these days, there's a lot of straight guys having a lot of group sex with a lot of other guys where their cocks are grinding together, double penetration in the same girl, and their balls are slapping against each other, or the girl's got two in her mouth. That group sex is actually a very straight thing. And when you are in that primal caveman state, amongst loving individuals who aren't going to go blab and tell the rest of the team what you did last night, the human being is capable of sex with any number of variations on a theme. There's a whole book called the Kama Sutra. Perhaps you've heard of it.
Do you think sexual orientation can be changed?
No. It can be ignored. It can be turned off.
Will you
but
do me a favor, turn that into a comment? Add
sure.
my question.
Yeah. I tried to do a good job of that. Do I think that... No, I mean, do
In other words, just say sexual orientation cannot be changed and whatever.
The reason I think that sexual orientation can't be changed is because it's getting into a biological level of your inner self. That there are things in our brains that are, every emotion is tied to a chemical, and then that chemical produces a chemical, and those are the ones that we become addicted to in our brains, and which shape us. And I think those things are intrinsic in nature, that every species exhibits homosexual behavior within them. Not every species, but a lot. And that there's something else too, that's something in the spark of your individual soul. There's just some that have this thing that's different from the others. And the universe produces them and wants them there because without them, the universe will devour itself if there's not someone there to make things pretty instead of to destroy things. And so much of that is tied up in not who we have sex with, but who we love and who we share our lives with and how do we share them, what informs them. No, it can't be changed. Can't be ignored. It could be ignored. I mean, you can turn off parts of your brain and live an unfulfilled life.
I was going to say, what about the people who claim to have been healed or deprogrammed?
I would like to search in reference to the people who feel that they have been deprogrammed, I would like to search the history on their internet. To see what pictures they've been looking at late at night before bedtime.
If there was a drug that could have changed your sexual orientation, would you have taken it?
If there was a drug, would I have taken a drug that would have made me straight? No. Would I have considered it? Very much so. I almost did get married. I almost did bite the bullet and just think, okay, this is just a phase. My dad's right. I'll shake it off. But I knew intrinsically inside that this was me. And that when I didn't fight it, the tension went away. And life was golden again. It's only when I question it that life falls apart. When you start falling down the escalator of life, it's like falling down the stairs, but it's an escalator, so it keeps going and you keep falling. Because you don't value yourself enough to love yourself enough to make something of yourself, regardless of what other people think, because you care so deeply about, do they love me? Do they accept me? Is this okay? Is this a sin? And it's just, it cripples you emotionally, physiologically, physically, spiritually, financially. I would be a much more successful person if I wasn't afraid of my very gay art form. I am the musical comedy cabaret porn star. I'm a drag queen on stage. I've done porn. I'm somewhere in between. In the gay community, there are DJs, porn stars, and drag queens. Those are our celebrities. We have Melissa Etheridge and Ellen DeGeneres and the Lesbians. We have the British gay guys, Elton John and George Michael and Boy George. And now we've got a few, Neil Patrick Harris and Zachary Quinto, and we're getting there. But for so long, we didn't have that. Would my parents have given me the cure? No. I think, and in their way, they've come around. And they've seen Dirty Little Show Tunes, and they've loved it. And I'm still not close to anyone in my family. There's a lot of pain, a lot of things that have nothing to do with me. Just the normal treachery of family secrets. The Peyton place of life. They did see in me. Yes, they were disappointed. Yes, it scared them. Yes, mostly it was also the late 80s. And Rock Hudson had just come out and died. And here's their college-age son in West Hollywood, coming out in LA. They knew, my dad knew what gay men were, and that as sensitive and sweet and trusting and honest as I was, that I could very easily get led astray. And frankly, I wish I had been. But would they have given me a pill? No, because ultimately they knew that I was smart enough to make my own choices. My dad very much respects my choices now. And in fact called recently to say he was talking to a colleague who had a gay son, and they were Muslim. And to this Muslim man, having a gay son was a crime against Allah, especially it was his only son and 6 daughters or whatever. And yet my dad was able to tell him about his famous son, who's an artist in San Francisco, who makes people laugh and finds joy in pain. No. My parents knew that I would be able to overcome whatever challenges life threw at me. I didn't always know that I was going to be able to conquer the challenges in my life, and I nearly didn't. But there was always something special about me that I knew I had to share with the world. When I was in college and finally coming to terms with my gayness, I began my militant period by getting an internship at Frontiers magazine in West Hollywood, which still publishes there. But it was a political magazine, and it had escort ads in the back, but it was a gay magazine. And I was an intern, and they let me do some writing. And one of the assignments they gave me was to go interview Simon LeVay when he had first published his findings about the when Simon LeVay had first published his findings about the hypothalamus and whether gay men had larger hypothalami than straight men. And he had done all this research and was saying that yes, there is a gay brain. And I wouldn't be surprised if he is correct, because I think I use more than the average 10%. If there's 90% of our brains that people don't use, I do. Because you don't give mind-expanding drugs to the smart kid. But no, I think LaVey has valid research to suggest that there is there is something in our DNA that's different, and perhaps more highly evolved, and that's why they like, oh, you think you're so superior. Well, no, but I can whip up dinner for 6 and have flowers on the table and write a sassy song to sing during dessert. So yes, I am superior. As far as if there is a gay gene and someday we have designer babies, well, then that will be a bad, sad thing if people can choose what kind of kid they're going to have. But they do already. They're going to screw up the kids no matter what. And sometimes I say, any child who is going to be born into a family where it's not going to be loved, if heaven's such a great place, then why is death such a bad thing? So, there's a play called Twilight of the Golds about the very thing of designer birth. I hope you can use clips because it's an excellent play. Jennifer Grey from Dirty Dancing was in it.
Film is what we're.
Oh yeah, I forgot that they did a film of it.
Jennifer Deals.
Yes. About this very thing, about designer babies, and the gay brother who comes home to find his sister is pregnant with a gay baby, and they're going to abort it. And I've read the play, I haven't seen the film, but what a brutal, awful thing. Especially, I think, in the end, they decide to go ahead with it. If that had come to be a reality 40 years ago, then maybe, yeah, I would be okay with the idea of someone sparing a child a life of misery and torment. But the world is not the same place it was 40 years ago. At all. And in my lifetime, I never thought we would have such strides in acceptance and clout and power, and we're getting there. Right now, it's taxation without representation. I mean, there's not enough women in Congress, much less gay people or ethnicities. And we just have way too many rich, old white men who refuse to die. Because that's the power, and that's how you keep power, is to make your constituents afraid of the other. And this is their last grasp to use the big bad boogeyman to scare the old ladies, because all the old ladies now have gay grandsons who do their hair, and their nephew Steve who puts in the track lighting. And the kids today are so blasé with queer and bisexual. They're all bi. The kids are bi. They're all... You should see the porn the kids are watching. There is this... There is, in this country, a groundswell of youthful, optimistic hope. Obama tapped into it, and then they wouldn't let him do anything with it. You're seeing it again with the Occupy Wall Street thing. The youth of America wants a better world. And openness about sexuality, of course, is a part of that. Lady Gaga would not have the career she has had if the youth of the world weren't ready to embrace androgyny and gender fluidity and the very thin veil of orientation. The world itself is ready. The people in the world are not ready for it. Our parents, our grandparents, especially the grandparents, because it's just so different. How can it be? How can that be okay when it was so not okay? Well, it's called being enlightened and removing yourself from these constructs that don't work, these oppressive institutions. If you want to have faith, have faith, but it doesn't mean you have to have a religion. I love my country. I do not love my government. I love love and relationships. I'm not crazy about marriage. It doesn't work for straight people. I've seen it not work for gay people. And you're joining your lives financially in every way. Ugh. It once took me 6 months to separate an AOL account from an ex. It was bad. But if we can live long enough, if we can kill off a few old congressmen fast enough and replace them with some young ones who aren't Mormon, we might be okay. 30 years would do it. Sadly, I don't know if we have 30 years ecologically, I think global warming might finally do the trick before then. I don't know. Well, I just want to say thank you for including me, because I'm not just a drag queen who gets up on stage and lip syncs to some song. Whenever I perform, I've written something new. It's a unique lyric that I've tailored to the occasion, about that occasion, with satire in mind, that I see the world differently. You forced me to. I'm an outsider in every way. So I see the world with my own truth, find the humor in it, and then show it back to you. And yet, still huffing and puffing and trying to make it. I haven't had my big break yet. So I'm still the starving artist wondering, did I make the wrong choices? Has being so overtly sexual hurt me? Has my own embarrassment for my family's feelings hindered me? Yes. But because of films like this and opportunities like this to ask these questions out loud and share abstract thoughts that sometimes people aren't going to have unless you lead them there. I've always been a leader. I was student body president. I'm ready to take my place at the table, regardless of what the people already sitting at the table think of me. I'm tired of asking for permission to live my life openly and freely and happily, and without these awful, evil, sad, frightened people dictating the way we can and cannot live and love in this life. So if I can be part of something like that, and people can look at it and question it and maybe find some new answers for themselves, then I'll have contributed something.